what questions might you have?
My question is, what is that thing in the middle?
Yeah.
What is that thing in the middle?
Is it a bird?
No, it's a little bit dark.
Crab, maybe.
Crab, bird. What
I
else?
wonder where it is.
What's that?
The location.
The location.
The different pictures.
Oh, so the, what else?
I was gonna say, how does the playing card fit into all this?
Okay.
Like, I'm wondering about a time frame.
Okay.
So the
What-
gentleman in the top left is looking a little dated.
What makes you say that?
The pith helmet and the mustache, I guess.
Okay.
And I guess
The submersible.
wherever they're waiting for it in line.
Right, which says unemployed, so it suggests maybe the 1920s, maybe.
All right. Anything else?
The plane, looks like a plane, or is it something on a boat?
Are you looking at the picture on the bottom?
The picture on the bottom, so it seems to, like they're traveling somewhere.
Rapid
It's like a submarine too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Water.
Submersion.
Yeah, the transition from what looks like a, tropical land-based to obviously deep sea exploration.
I would think the squid, giant squid looking strong submarine one are really good from someone.
So I think as we read the book together, this page may become clearer, but I just wanted to offer you this up. So you can put it down under your chair and nothing to be distracted by that for a moment.
You want us to act like 12-year-olds too?
Yeah, you can act like children. During this read aloud.
Yeah.
It's an emergency. 20
Yeah,
years, no one's
no,
ever
I need to go
So I might have you turn and talk to each other. I might also just pose a question to the group. And I think I'll have hands for this, unlike the science talk where we just want people to talk to each other. Right? Okay, great. So the book that we're going to share today is called Into the Deep, The Life of Naturalist and Explorer William Beebe. So his name is on the board up there. And the first thing I want you to do before I get into the book, by the way, it was written by David Sheldon, who also, I believe, did the illustrations. So, the first thing I want you to do is turn and talk to your elbow partner and answer this question. If you could have your passion become your profession, what would that look like? What would it be? And if you end up with 3 in a group, that's fine. So I'm just going to listen.
I was trying to cover it
Oh,
too.
okay.
I
I did that
something
too when I was
with
reading
animals and plants. Somehow
What would
like
it
a
look like?
National Geographic photographer or something like that. That'd be pretty cool.
I thought maybe you thought I had it as
I would say geography, I like to travel. So seeing, having a job where I can go into
So that takes different things. Sometimes it can be an artistic, listening or presenting, or it could be medical, which I also love.
So I'm going to say show 5. And I forgot to mention that in my classroom, show 5 is our signal for coming to the end to your conversation, and then raising your hand and looking in the direction of the speaker. So sorry about that. So I heard a lot of chatter. I'm just curious, is anybody willing to share what their passion is that they might turn into a profession? And maybe it is already. What do you have to say as teachers? Dave?
I think we all had a common thread of travel and visiting new places and learning about different cultures. I weaved National Geographic into it just because that seems like the best way to do it.
Okay.
We both talked about how our passion is teaching and we're doing it.
You're already doing it. Great.
My passion is science communication, whether that's writing, video, audio, or from the classroom.
We both have a lot of passions. It's like
Hard to
we
choose,
always
right?
randomly explore the one that inspires us at the moment.
Okay. All right, good. Well, you may see connection to William Beebe's life from that question. So let me start. Born in 1877 in Brooklyn, New York, William Beebe was an only child whose parents cherished him. His parents were both nature lovers. Wanting to encourage Will's own love of nature, they decided to move to rural East Orange, New Jersey. Will spent every moment he could exploring the hills and streams near his family home, studying and collecting animals. He wanted to become a naturalist, so here are his parents, and I think Andrew, you talked about some of the old-fashioned sort of stuff going on, right? Here is Will climbing trees. He trained himself to move slowly and quietly through the woods like his hero, the Native American warrior Uncas from The Last Mohicans. And by the time he was 12, Will was an expert animal tracker. I don't know what East Orange is like today, but we got that. On brisk autumn days, Will and his mom counted migrating birds. The annual migration count was started by the Audubon Society as a way to track how many birds move through different parts of the world each season. Birders across the country count the numbers of each species and report back to the society, which continues to log the data to this day. Birds fascinated Will, and he participated in the migration counts all his life. So let me just toss this question out. What are some reasons that birds migrate?
I had a second grader do a curiosity project around bird migration. So along with him, I learned a lot about bird migration.
You can share a few things.
And he said that it's sometimes because of food needs, and sometimes it is because of daylight needs, sometimes it's because of safety needs, sometimes it's because of the ingrained ways of where they need to lay eggs, where their young will survive. That's what I remembered.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else? Sounds good. Temperature.
Just think of those who want to be born.
Okay, great. I'm just curious if anybody in the group has ever participated in any citizen science opportunity like Will did. So Randy, can you tell us about
Some of my kindergartners and I last summer did the ladybug tracking project, where if you found something that was not a regular looking ladybug, they sent me the pictures and then I posted them online. That was our summer homework for last summer.
So I often accompany my husband as he does his bud observations at the Arboretum. So there are a whole team of citizen scientists who are studying a certain packet of trees and recording weekly.
And I'm hoping this year in 6th grade science we'll have an opportunity to participate in some sort of citizen science possibility. So here is Will with his mom counting migrating birds. One summer day, Will's father found a young owl. Its parents nowhere to be found. Will named it Moses and raised it all by himself. Moses was always interested in Will's latest find, but maybe not in the same way Will was. So here is Will with his owl. And I'm just curious, why do you think that the author said, maybe not in the same way Will was? What's that all about?
Moses is looking for a snack.
Moses might be looking for a snack, and I'm not sure if you can see the picture, but what is he holding in his hand? A frog, right? So maybe, perhaps that's why. David Sheldon did that. With all his collecting, Will's bedroom became a small natural history museum. Will taught himself taxidermy. Do you know what taxidermy is? And so this is what I would do with 6th graders. They would not know what taxidermy is. Yes, he had aquariums filled with fish and some with snakes. He mounted countless insect specimens. He also had plant and rock collections. He wrote in his field journal, "To be a naturalist is better than to be a king." So, you're nodding. Tell me about your nodding.
I guess that answers the question on my end.
Right, here it is on the page. Okay, good. Do any of you have collections? Any of you collect?
I collect presidential memorabilia.
Oh, you have, oh, here.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I collect stamps, not like postage stamps, but like ink stamps.
Okay.
I have a rock collection.
Shells.
Plants. House plants.
House plants. Wow, great. So we have a lot of common people. By the time Will was 18, his passion had become his profession. His articles on nature appeared in newspapers and magazines. Before Will had even graduated from college, he was hired by W.T. Hornaday, director of the New Zoological Park, which for the adults in the room is now the Bronx Zoo, to be the assistant curator of birds. He cared for the park's birds and gathered new specimens. By the way, that was one of the pictures on your page. That was the New York Zoological Park birdhouse. Soon Will was traveling the world on scientific expeditions, and as a member of the New York Zoological Society, he explored dangerous and remote areas of Mexico, South America, and Southeast Asia in search of rare species of birds and other animals. The world in Will's day was very different from the world we know today. Large parts of the Earth's land, seas, and skies were still unexplored, with countless animals yet to be discovered. So we still don't know about that creature, right? In his travels, Will realized that collecting animals and bringing them back to museums and zoos was an outdated method of study. He was one of the first naturalists to attempt the often risky approach of observing animals in their natural habitat. He would stake out an area of jungle and study it from top to bottom. And Will's method of studying nature made him a pioneer in what we now call the science of ecology. So, my question for the group is, ecology, how do we understand the science of ecology? What does it actually involve? It's one of those branches, you say biology, you say physics, you say chemistry. What about ecology? Based on what we heard about.
It's the study of, I think it's the study of ecosystems, so sort of like the interactions between like the abiotic and the biotic factors in a certain place.
Okay. So if this were sixth graders, I would say, you mentioned biotic and abiotic. There might be some people in the group who have no idea what those words mean. Can you?
So interactions between the living and non-living factors in the environment.
Okay. So what are some of the non-living factors that might be important?
Soil, water, atmosphere, temperature, rainfall.
And that would be an important question. Sixth graders don't really think about that so much. They like the animal piece, and they don't think about the plants. So you might also say, what are some of the living things? And, can you think of some other naturalists who may have been inspired by Will Beebe? If you've never heard of Will Beebe, have you heard of any other naturalists, ecologists? One came up this morning already. Jane Goodall. Jane Goodall.
Jacques Cousteau.
Jacques Cousteau.
Rachel Carson, Edward Wilson.
Are any of the people you just mentioned considered household names?
Rachel Carson was.
Was.
She's moved out of.
Jacques Cousteau.
Yeah, those two.
Pretty bad.
I suppose it depends on which circles you run. I will tell you that my sixth graders have no idea who Jacques Cousteau is, which is so incredible. Wow.
They haven't watched the extended scenes on Finding Nemo.
They started with on Dancing with
Oh,
the
Steve, the
Irwin.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they might
They
be.
might know. So they
But
have,
I think it's like referential as in like when I was growing up, then there was like references to
Mhm.
it.
references.
Is he considered a naturalist?
I
That's
don't
what he's
know.
considered
What do you think about
quack.
that? Steve Irwin, naturalist, ecologist?
But he,
I'm going to toss out a question to the adults, pretending now, or not pretending now, but really, do you know what the root of the ecosystem is? The Greek,
Oh.
do you know?
No.
It's oikos, and so it's actually the same root as economics. Anybody know what, when there's a Greek yogurt named oikos?
Oh, that's what I just said under my breath. I
There you
said
go.
that the
What, does anybody know what oikos is? It's kind of cool when kids learn this. It actually means home or household. So ecosystem and economics, kind of interesting root. So Will wrote books about his explorations that captured the public's imagination. His adventures made him a household name. A wealthy admirer even gave Will the use of a large steamship called the Arcturus, which came with its own research laboratory. For his next adventure, he traveled to the Galapagos Islands, where Charles Darwin made the observations that led to his famous theories of evolution. He wanted to continue Darwin's study of the island's unusual inhabitants, such as the marine iguanas. So if you were sixth graders, at this point I'm going to ask, what do you know about Charles Darwin's ideas about evolution? Maybe offer up what you think you know about Charles Darwin. His theories on evolution.
Do you want us to?
Sure, go for it.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, yeah.
The
What made them so unusual, do you think? Living in the water? Right?
They're the only reptile that derives its food directly from the ocean. And the males actually swim under the water to collect the seaweed. Only lizards, not reptiles, only lizards.
Or the lizards. As I say, right, when we think of iguanas, we don't
Yeah,
think of
because
them as
crocodiles are
lizards.
not.
Right. So while in the Galapagos, Will tried helmet diving for the first time. He was amazed by the variety of life he discovered underwater. The experience convinced him to devote the rest of his life to studying and exploring the oceans and its creatures, or the ocean and its creatures.
That's the squids.
Yeah. Not that
That looks safe,
yeah.
right?
That looks safe, right? Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that, right? I mean, I might think of some questions around that picture, and how does that really work? And how come water doesn't get up all in there? So, anyway. I'm definitely intrigued. Will continued his ocean studies off the island of Bermuda. His team of scientists lowered nets into the water to catch sea creatures. Unfortunately, many of the delicate creatures from the deep seas fell apart when they were pulled up to the surface. Frustrated, he decided it was time to try something that no one had ever attempted. Can you predict what he did?
He's going to go to them.
He's going to go.
He's going to go to them.
Picture.
He would visit the creatures of the deep in their own environment. Now he just needed a way to get there. Okay, and so some of you already, as adults, you knew that picture on the page, right? But these are sixth graders, they might not know. In 1928, Will teamed up with an engineering student named Otis Barton. Otis was as excited about exploring the ocean depths as Will. He designed a deep sea diving vessel, which Will named the bathysphere. So bathysphere, think about that. And do you think that's a good name for his contraption?
As a sixth grader, I would say no, because you get wet in a bathtub.
It's definitely right.
Yeah, but it's a sphere, it's.
It's a sphere, it's round.
Like maybe it's two baths on top of each other.
What is bath?
What is bath, right?
Bath
So-
actually.
Does anybody know what bath actually means?
It's a place.
It's a place in
It's also a level.
bathymetry, right, it means depth.
That is good.
It is deep. Plans were made for the first ever deep sea expedition. Both men would need plenty of courage for what they were about to do. No one before them had ever descended more than 530 feet below the ocean's surface and lived to tell about it, but Will and Otis planned to go even deeper. The bathysphere. And so we'll be learning about ocean levels and sixth-grade ocean zones, and so, right, and bathymetry. The 2.5 ton, anybody know how many pounds that is? 2.5 ton, 5,000 pounds. The 2.5 ton bathysphere was created in a hot, steamy foundry. You know what a foundry is? A place where you might melt and gold iron, right? In New Jersey. Its walls were made from 1.5 inches of thick steel. Many unmanned test dives were necessary before the men could ride in it. On one test, the bathysphere came up filled with seawater because of a small leak. If Will and Otis had been inside, they would have drowned. The hatch shot out like a bullet from the force of the pressurized water inside. Unfortunately, no one was standing in the way. So, pressurized water, what's that all about? Squished water. Squished water. Why is it squished?
There's water on top of it.
There's water on top of it.
Lots of them.
So when we think about the ocean, right, some of the characteristics of the ocean, the deep pressure.
Oh, yeah, the deeper you go.
And so if any of you have ever been scuba diving or snorkeling, you may know something about pressure. You might know, does anybody know what's very important to do when you're scuba diving? Because of all that pressure. Ascend slowly, right? Let your bubbles go ahead of you. Will and Otis began a series of manned dives in June of 1930. Finally, on August 15, 1934, they were ready to attempt the deepest dive ever made, with Will and Otis huddled inside the bathysphere. We don't have a sense of how big or small this is, right? You've seen the same, right? The bathysphere was lifted over the rolling waves of the Atlantic Ocean. And through his headset, Will gave the order to the communications officer, Miss Gloria Hollister, which I think is great, lower the bathysphere. So it's 19. 1930. 1934. Anybody know what's going on in the world in 1934? The Depression. The bathysphere was plunged into a different world. Clouds of foam and bubbles gave way to an awesome view. The ocean surface above them undulated like a waving magic carpet. Daylight streaked down in great shafts of light, as in a cathedral. The bathysphere slowly descended from the world of sunshine and warmth into one of midnight blues and unbearable coldness. Will gazed at the vibrant ecosystem in action. Squid and fish fed upon smaller shrimps and snails, which in turn fed upon even smaller plankton. So what I want you to do now is turn and talk to your neighbor about what do you know about plankton and their role in the ocean ecosystem. Plankton. You can't.
That's everything that you need to know about and find out detail they would reference it.
Those plankton.
Did you
Phytoplankton.
web activities to release
They're both.
Yes, 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 yes. That was really cool. But the whole yeah. Yeah.
All right, show 5. So what collectively do we know about plankton? SpongeBob. Yes, thanks to SpongeBob, a lot of us critters know plankton. What else?
They're like prime time food in the ocean.
Okay. All right. Prime time food for
Many things.
right. Whales. You guys were talking about oxygen producers. Did you know that? Right. And my sisters, that would be totally novel to them. And you were talking about different types of plankton, I think, over here, right? Plankton is a general term
Right,
for.
but I think it's drifting, floating, so embryos and things, so it's not just a.
Yep. And there are. So you also used. You sort of got specific about.
Zooplankton, phytoplankton,
There we
yes,
go.
I'll say it. There we go.
There we go. Phytoplankton, zooplankton. So phyto and zoo, 2 prefixes, right? Zoo, any wild guesses? Wild guesses what zoo? Animals. And phyto, plant, light, photo. So we're going to be learning about phytoplankton's role in producing oxygen. Right, my 6th graders learned that 50% of the atmospheric oxygen comes actually from the ocean, which is pretty wild. So it's no longer the lungs of the rainforest, no longer, excuse me, the lungs of the planet are no longer the Amazon rainforest. Without thinking about the oceans too.
There was red tide some years ago.
Yeah, we do talk about that.
In kindergarten, we used the word plant-like organisms.
Plant-like organisms, yes. Photosynthetic organisms.
Because they get really stuck in that plant animal thing.
There we go.
And then when we watch one moving in the video, they're like, wait. I'm like, that's why I said plant-like.
Plant-like. I can share with you a video that may help you. As they descended into the abyss, Will and his partner were startled by an enormous creature gliding by them in the darkness. It must be at least 20 feet long, they gasped. It was impossible to identify the mysterious sea monster. The explorers were nervous, but continued their journey. So this is what we're given from Dave Sheldon, the illustrator and author. What do you think they saw?
Squid.
A half mile, 2,640 feet down, Will felt as if he were in outer space. In the pitch black water, eerie creatures with fantastic shapes emitted their own light. The bathysphere continued to descend as far as its cable would reach, a record-breaking 3,028 feet. Once again, Will's explorations made him a pioneer. His underwater journey opened up a new branch of scientific research into the deep seas. Does anybody happen to know the term for organisms that emit their own light? Bioluminescent. Bio, meaning light, luminescent. Light, great. And so for the kids, they would say, oh, there's an anglerfish, and they would know some of these creatures. Great. As years passed and the Earth's frontiers were explored and studied, Will changed his focus once again. He saw that every creature, from biggest to the smallest, was important to the Earth and needed protection. Through his writing and lectures, he promoted conservation and struggled to help save the Earth's vanishing wilderness and endangered species. I was supposed to stop and say, I was supposed to say after, we'll change his focus once again. I was supposed to say, what do you imagine his focus became? Okay. I just told you. During his final years, oh, here's the picture, him lecturing. And I believe he was a professor as well. Let's see. During his final years, Will returned to the study of his beloved birds. He opened a research station on the island of Trinidad. He's actually buried there. From time to time, aspiring young explorers and scientists visited, eager to show the friendly scientists their latest finds from the jungle. And to this day, scientists continue to be inspired by Will's work. So at this point, what I would love for you to do is look at your page, okay? And there are 2 quotes on the back. So now, Eric, if you read the 2 quotes on the back. And those are from William Beebe. And my question for you is, what did those quotes make you think about? What are you thinking about now?
The second quote, I think, deals a lot with his later work, where he's basically saying that once a living thing is gone, it's gone forever. A lot of things we can revisit, but we can't bring back. The species of animals are once survived.
It's an excellent quote for the environment, saving the environment.
I like the first quote, that skills of observation are trainable. Practice and practice and practice, and the more you practice, the more you see, the more you experience.
I had the same thoughts. That quote, I had a visual in my head. Last summer I was camping, and at a beach near the campsite, a bald eagle flew the length of the rope that marks where the swimmers can be and the boats can be, and there were about 100 people on the beach, and only a 9-year-old girl and I saw the bald literally 5 feet above the rope for about 300 feet straight across. And I was dumbfounded. The little girl looked at me and she was like, "Was that an eagle?" I'm like, "It was." And I looked around, I'm like, no one else noticed that. It was scary.
Were you going to say something?
Yeah, so the first quote, which is.
No, I called you Kristen by
Oh,
mistake.
Danielle.
Yeah,
The first quote made me think of my uncle because he's a marathon runner and he trains year round, and he doesn't listen to music. And we're like, "What do you do the whole time?" He's like, "I just look around." And he was helping me move into my apartment, and he's also an engineer, and I live on the 3rd floor, and he was using rope to rope things up, and just like his body weight. And at one point, he was like, "Oh, look at that butterfly." And we're like, "What are you talking about?" Like, my couch is in a row. It's like 60 feet above us. He was like, "No, but look at it." We're like, "How do you see that?" But, you know, he just like sees, like he'll like, on the highway, he'll be, "Oh, look at that bird." We're like, "Look at the road." So it just made me think of him.
I also like just the kind of persistence, rather than kind of, you know, we're into quick, short, like just that, you know, you need to stick with it, and yeah, it's critical.
Also applies a lot to like paleontology and forensic science. I mean, most people look at a bone and they don't really see anything special about it. It's just a bone. But if you are a paleontologist, you can, you know, after years and lots of experience and lots of practice, you can look at the bone and say, okay, this is just from, you know, a leg bone. We can tell just how big this person was. We can tell if it was a man or a woman, or if it was a male or female. We can tell like maybe even how this creature died. We can tell like how it stood. Was it on all fours? Was it upright? Like we can tell all these things by just looking at little different patterns in it. And this is just a bone.
Yeah.
So having these powers of observation can be really powerful when you know what to do.
I like to do weekly quotes with my students, and I think this would be a good one in 2nd grade. The kids study the writing log. Excuse me, the writing log. So maybe the first week of that, because oftentimes they're like, nothing's changing. They're just walking around. So helping them understand that you need to persist and really observe what's going on while they're doing the things they're doing.
So I would come back to my focus question, why is it important for us to learn about our world? And maybe that second part, how does William Beebe's life illustrate this? But that first question sounded so simplistic that I'm sure some of you are like, oh, really? But in fact, I think that just in this discussion and these quotes, you know, you've been inspired to think about what that means for you, perhaps as teachers, or perhaps students, and so what would you say? I mean, why is it important for us to learn about our world? And you know, Will's story in particular, for me, it was like, oh, that's a reason that I would want my sixth graders to come to. But what do you think about that? I mean, there's lots of reasons, right? Obviously. So what do you think about that? Why is it important for us to learn about our world?
So you can notice changes.
Notice changes?
Take
No.
care of it.
Take care of it. What else? Yeah.
Just to make sure we're not destroying things that are important within our ecosystems.
Work with it instead of against it.
I think in the noticing, there's a real presence of being fully alive, you know, too, of really being here in this magnificent place that we get to be in for a very short time.
That was similar to my thought, that you can just enjoy life.
Well, for the betterment of humanity, I mean, talking about observations like Fleming and penicillin on hold, like, that's an observation right there that directly led to life-saving medical treatments.
So for me, for my sixers, I would think about that whole notion of the conservation piece, but everything else that you mentioned is lovely.
I also think, especially working with children, the preservation component,
Yeah.
where I feel like even in my short life, you know, in the big scheme of things, I feel like there have been significant changes, and I do think about, you know, these 6-year-olds when they're 30, 40, 50, 80, how different the world would be, and I hope that it is not, unfortunately, different.
And they're still like, what a Beebe, right? Looking out, like, I mean, if you can get them when they're young, and they forget how lovely it is to just.
I would also say that since you gave us that definition of eco being home,
Mhm.
this is our home, and if we destroy it, we
Well,
don't have
the
anywhere to
ecosystem on
live.
the planet is the planet, right?
I also think about how, like, kids these days don't go out and play, they're always looking for distractions that are within their fingertips, yeah, so they're, you know, like I was saying, like, I walk down the street, I have my headphones in, and my uncle runs 18 miles, and he's just looking around, and how we're missing so many things because of that.
So one of the things I say to my sixth graders early on in the year is that, you know, everything in the world is connected. You just, a couple of things have to be in place. First, you have to, you know, pay attention